Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch. And holy Toledo, the amount of volatility right now that we're seeing in the market, especially with Palantir after their earnings, another slam dunk across the board. However, price action is getting quite interesting as we speak in the overnight session here. We're going to be breaking down the earnings results, just looking at the headline big numbers and what's been happening in the market, and especially what's happening in the broader indices. How the market is looking to be relatively resilient. However, we're seeing some of these individual stocks that are starting to face some selling pressure on top of a period that seasonality has a lot of bullishness that favors it in terms of probabilities. And you also have big AI deals being made with these new neoclouds like CIFR and IREN that are getting a huge bid today. So you have a lot of contradicting types of price actions going across the board. And you have Ethereum that is continuing to actually see a dip right here. Investors could be possibly getting impatient. We'll be talking about that. If you're a new or returning viewer, hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos. Let's hit 30,000 and follow me on X for more up-to-date, to the minute type of updates. It's free. Check it down below. Now, popping up on the screen here, Palantir closes officially on the market close at 207.18. You can see right after earnings, we see a lot of buying pressure that comes in for Palantir. Seeing here, even at touch 207 is quite a large accomplishment. However, in the overnight session, we actually see it selling off. Palantir is down about $10 in the overnight session. Immediately after hours from that earnings call right at market close right here, Palantir popped to 213, and now we see it right now currently in the overnight session at 197.42. In looking at the specific numbers, the headline top numbers right here, earnings per share at 21 cents versus 15 cents expected. Revenue at 1.18 billion versus the 1.09 expected. So beating those earnings, coming out with good numbers in terms of revenue, up 63% year over year. 833 million in U.S. revenue, up 77% year over year. Commercial revenue up 121%. Government revenue up 52%. And you see 40% margin here. A huge rule of 40 at 114%. That's astronomical. All sitting on $6.4 billion in cash. So Alex Karp just coming out here with another slam dunk on their earnings report. Palantir has always been priced for perfection, and we saw that kind of right after the after hours. Now, the big question is, why does Palantir come back down here to this $200 level? A lot of people use Palantir as a barometer, trying to basically gauge or price in the top of the market. And that is because Palantir carries a very high valuation behind that. And I think that's what could be happening behind the scenes, also on top of a very big short that just opened up from Burry. As we know, the guy from the Big Short, we'll be talking about that, which could be bringing a lot of uncertainty into this individual stock. Nonetheless, in terms of the fundamental earnings report, that's awesome. Palantir has another slam dunk earnings. We're seeing, regardless of its price, the business is still expanding at a very rapid pace. And Alex Karp is continuing to beat the doubters and the people that keep saying that Palantir, eventually needs to come down at some point. Palantir's been very resilient. So could this sell-off be possibly due to the Michael Burry that just filed the 13F 11 days ago? Massive put shorts on Palantir and NVDA. And this is after he tweeted this a few days ago, basically saying sometimes we see bubbles, sometimes there's something to do about it, and sometimes the only winning move is not to play, basically just sitting on the sidelines. But then we see a massive amount of short position on Palantir and on NVIDIA coming through here, which could, of course, be spooking the market. However, one thing to note is that the market can be very irrational longer than people can be solvent. We've seen this, and no matter if you're long or if you are short on the market, we've seen this in terms of names like Quantum and things like that that have been holding up quite well throughout this year. So in terms of price action, in terms of a technical basis, I don't know where this is going to open up. Palantir, we did have the NVIDIA partnership and the whole optimism behind there that helped break it out of this, help to break it out of this consolidation zone, which pushed Palantir past that $200 level of resistance that was tested there, and we saw earnings that pushes it through here. But now Palantir is sitting out at about 198 right here in the overnight session. And the question is, is this $200 level of support, or resistance, is this going to become a level of support going forward? Or if it loses that, could Palantir likely retest this 170 to this 180 zone, which I think would be incredibly fine. Sometimes these healthy corrections, especially in highly valued stocks, is kind of just due, and that it's healthy for the individual name in itself. There's been massive, support at that 170 and a lot of reversals triggered there, especially with some uncertainty that's in the market, which we're kind of starting to see that's going throughout the zone, even though I'm still maintaining a bullish sentiment through the year end. Reason being is what we're seeing spies down here a little bit. The future's down about $2.50. Nothing to really make a whole big fuss about. But you see the S&P 500 also here at 68.51, holding really, really well. The concern here is that the Mag 7s are really doing a good job to hold resiliency within this market, which is why the indices we're seeing, setting these all-time highs, though we're seeing these individual names that are starting to see a lot of selling pressure throughout the market. But nonetheless, with all the stars that we've kind of had aligned, that's with the whole trade tensions that are kind of starting to get behind us. We have quantitative tightening that is going to be coming to the end of that cycle. We have rate cuts continuing to be expected, which is bullish for the market. The amount of money that's being printed right now, which is not necessarily a good thing for our debt, but in terms of liquidity that could be coming into the market, on top of that, you also have crypto that's experiencing a lot of selling pressure. And that's with Ethereum that we had right here. Ethereum's been holding the strong floor at 3,700 and dips down here to about 3,500. I was like, oh my gosh, is Ethereum going the opposite way? And this is after Tom Lee's really been banging on the table, saying that, hey, we're going to see this 7,000 ETH by year end, Bitcoin to 150 to 200,000. And right now where Bitcoin does sit at is at 106. So in terms of, November, there's only 2 months left, literally. This is where you're starting to see some patience being lost, some trustworthiness possibly being lost from the longs, a lot of liquidations across the board. Tom Lee, though, is still maintaining a bullish perspective, and I'm going to probably side with that to the end of the year here, especially with just the seasonality that we've had. We've had a very large crypto liquidation event, and now we see consolidation in the broader market. That's basically how Tom Lee sums this up. And into the whole cryptocurrency market, the same thing. With BMNR here, it's down at about $43. We see people that are being like, hey, I can't take this anymore. A lot of people are being shaken out. Personally, just kind of sitting on the sidelines, not being shaken out right here in terms of this is why it's important, of course, not a financial advisor, but not to become too over leveraged and to be emotional. If you become too over leveraged in the market, too much of your emotions are going to be eating away at you, and you're not fighting against the market. You end up fighting against yourself to the point where you can't take it anymore. And that is where you see possibly early selling and things like that. So if you can be comfortable with a lot of volatility, that does show, conviction behind the trades that people are personally taking. So you see BMNR right here at an interesting point at 42.86. One, in terms of a technical, just viewpoint, at this $40 level, this is a very strong level of support. That's where we had this mega reversal that pushed BMNR back to this $64 after it kind of launched from this $30 zone all the way up here to the 70s. So in terms of this being tested, I think that's, entirely possible. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know which way it's going to go. But nonetheless, some of the big deals that we're seeing in the market, CIFR mining here, IREN receiving huge AI deals today, which shows you that the need for power for these GPUs that are coming in at a rapid pace is still very early to the game. And for AI to be developed at this rapid pace, these companies are going to have to build very large data centers. You see CIFR right here that popped up to 24 after their earnings and was kind of beat back down here. The market makers taking this back down to about 22, 21. Could you see possibly some profit taken from there? IREN pushes back up to 78 to about 67 right now. These are very high retail trendy stocks right now in the market, so we could be expecting some volatility there. But nonetheless, the deals themselves are kind of some main viewpoints that are keeping my perspective bullish towards the year end here. And especially it'll be interesting with Ethereum right here, if it catches a bid, if it recaptures that 3,700. One thing I'll say about Ethereum with Tom Lee, as it decreases its price right here, That just gives Tom more buying power that, with the same amount of capital, obviously, if the price goes down, he can accumulate and try to achieve that 5% goal at a quicker pace. So I guess we'll see what happens. Some interesting things happen in the market. What do you think about all this? Peace out. Take care. And I'll catch you guys later.